The human captain's smile. We didn't understand until it was too late. The town of Black Hollow was a place forgotten by time, nestled deep within a valley shrouded by dense, ancient forests. Its streets were narrow, lined with crooked houses that seemed to lean inward as if whispering secrets to one another. The townsfolk were a quiet, wary bunch, their eyes always darting away when strangers passed by. It was a place where the air felt heavy, as though the weight of unseen eyes pressed down on you the moment you stepped into its boundaries. And yet, for all its eerie stillness, Black Hollow had one peculiar claim to fame. The old amusement park on the edge of town, known as Captain Grin's Wonderland. The park had been closed for decades, its rusted gates chained shut, and its once vibrant colors faded to a dull, lifeless gray. The centerpiece of the park was a massive carousel, its horses frozen mid-gallop, their painted eyes wide and staring. At the heart of the carousel stood the figure of the human captain, a towering animatronic pirate with a perpetual grin etched into his face. His eyes, though made of glass, seemed to follow you wherever you went, and his voice, once cheerful and inviting, now crackled with static whenever the old speakers sputtered to life. The townsfolk never spoke of the park, and if asked, they would quickly change the subject, their faces pale and their hands trembling. It was this place that drew Eleanor Crane to Black Hollow. A freelance journalist with a penchant for the macabre, Eleanor had spent years chasing stories of the strange and unexplained. She had heard whispers of Captain Grin's Wonderland in online forums, tales of disappearances and strange occurrences tied to the park. Some claimed that the human captain was more than just a machine, that he had a mind of his own and a hunger that could never be satisfied. Others spoke of a hidden room beneath the carousel, a place where the park's darkest secrets were buried. For Eleanor, it was the perfect story, one that could catapult her career to new heights. And so, armed with her camera, a notebook, and an unshakable sense of curiosity, she arrived in Black Hollow on a cold, overcast afternoon. The town greeted her with silence. The few people she encountered on the streets averted their eyes, quickening their pace as though afraid she might stop them. The local inn, a creaky, weather-beaten building with a sign that read, "The Hollow Rest," was the only place willing to take her in. The innkeeper, a gaunt man with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes, handed her a key without a word, his gaze fixed on some distant point over her shoulder. The room was sparse, its walls bare except for a single cracked mirror that reflected the dim light of a flickering bulb. Eleanor set her bags down and glanced out the window, her eyes drawn to the silhouette of the amusement park in the distance. Even from here she could see the human captain's grin, a faint glimmer of white against the darkening sky. That night, as the wind howled through the trees and the inn groaned with the weight of its years, Eleanor dreamed of the carousel. She saw herself standing in the center of the platform, the horses circling around her, their hooves pounding against the wood like a heartbeat. The human captain loomed above her, his grin widening as he leaned down, his glass eyes reflecting her terrified face. She tried to run, but her feet were rooted to the spot, the music of the carousel growing louder and more distorted until it became a deafening roar. She woke with a start, her heart pounding and her sheets drenched in sweat. The clock on the bedside table read 3:17 a.m. The next morning, Eleanor made her way to the amusement park, her camera slung over her shoulder and her notebook tucked under her arm. The gates were just as rusted and foreboding as she had imagined, the chains that held them shut thick with age. She hesitated for a moment, a chill running down her spine as she reached out to touch the cold metal. Then, with a deep breath, she pulled a pair of bolt cutters from her bag and snapped the chains apart. The gates creaked open with a sound that echoed through the empty park, and Eleanor stepped inside. The air was thick with the scent of decay, the ground littered with broken bottles and faded ticket stubs. The carousel stood in the center of the park, its once bright colors now muted and peeling. The human captain loomed above it all, his grin as wide and unsettling as ever. Eleanor approached cautiously, her footsteps echoing in the silence. She could feel the weight of his gaze on her, those glass eyes following her every move. She raised her camera and snapped a few photos, the flash illuminating his face in brief, stark bursts. As she lowered the camera, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small, almost imperceptible door at the base of the carousel, partially hidden by the platform. Her heart raced as she knelt down, brushing away the dirt and debris to reveal a rusted handle. She pulled on it, the door creaking open, to reveal a set of narrow, winding stairs leading down into darkness. For a moment she hesitated, the memory of her dream flashing through her mind, but then, with a determined breath, she turned on her flashlight and descended into the shadows. The stairs led to a long, narrow corridor, its walls lined with faded posters and broken machinery. The air was damp and cold, the sound of dripping water echoing in the distance. Eleanor's flashlight flickered as she moved deeper into the corridor, the beam of light catching on something glinting in the darkness. She approached cautiously, her breath catching in her throat as she realized what it was. A row of glass jars, each one filled with a murky liquid and a single human eye. The eyes seemed to follow her as she moved, their pupils dilating in the dim light. She stumbled back, her stomach churning, but forced herself to press on. The corridor opened into a larger room, its walls covered in strange symbols and diagrams. In the center of the room stood a table, its surface stained with dark, dried blood. On the table lay a series of tools, their edges sharp and gleaming. Eleanor's flashlight flickered again and she shook it, the beam of light catching on something in the corner of the room. She turned, her heart pounding as she saw it. A figure, hunched and motionless, its back to her. She took a step closer, her breath shallow, and the figure turned. It was the human captain. His grin was wider now, his glass eyes gleaming with a malevolent light. His movements were jerky and unnatural, his limbs creaking as he stepped toward her. Eleanor stumbled back, her flashlight falling from her hand and rolling across the floor. The beam of light caught on something else, something that made her blood run cold. A pile of bones, their surfaces smooth and white, stacked neatly in the corner. The human captain's grin widened as he reached out, his fingers brushing against her cheek. She screamed, the sound echoing through the room as the darkness closed in around her. When she woke, she was back in her room at the inn, the sun streaming through the window. For a moment she thought it had all been a dream, a nightmare brought on by the strange atmosphere of the town. But then she saw it, a single, rusted key, lying on the bedside table, its surface cold to the touch, and as she reached out to pick it up, she heard it, faint but unmistakable, the sound of the carousel, its music drifting through the air like a ghostly whisper. Eleanor knew then that she had uncovered something far darker than she had ever imagined. The human captain's grin was not just a mask, it was a warning, a promise of horrors yet to come. And as she clutched the key in her hand, she realized that the story she had come to tell was far from over. The secrets of Captain Grin's Wonderland were alive, and they were hungry. The moral of the story, as Eleanor would later write in her final, unfinished article, was this: some doors are meant to remain closed, some secrets better left buried. For in the darkness there are things that should never see the light of day, and some smiles hide horrors too terrible to comprehend. The human captain's grin was not just a symbol of the park's past, it was a reminder that curiosity, no matter how well-intentioned, can lead to a fate worse than death. And in the end, Eleanor Crane learned that lesson too late.